Greetings, sisters and brothers. So today, we start with a focus. Today's focus is streamlining the channel's energy so that he goes further back and relaxes. We have prepped very little of the meeting with him. Our other focus is to streamline his energy so that our presentation becomes more of a conversation with you versus an erratic flow. This is all part of the process of learning to work with his body and for our energy to come through and for him to work with us. And so that will be the focus for what we do for today. We say this because there are those who will be watching that may be interested in the idea of channeling and how working with a being's energy works in order to achieve a channel state. And so we will work to be transparent. Before we begin, we want to broach upon our tone and demeanor in our conversations and say up front that sometimes it's going to be our point to troll you. Sometimes it's going to be our point to push your buttons. We will say things in a certain way in an attempt to evoke a reaction. Because it is within that reaction, if the person is serious about seeing themselves clearly, they will have the opportunity to be able to perceive what they are reacting to. So allow us to be clear on this point. There are going to be points and times, for example, in our writings with the channel, we have said the statement that it is time for the children of humanity to grow up from being children of God to being adults of God. And notice how that phrased. Children of God, God being the parent and guiding the children. Children who do not know any better. Children that will run aimlessly towards the street and get hit by a car. And so someone needs to be there to monitor them, to watch them, to protect them, because they do not know any better. You do know better. And it is time for you to know better. The choices that you have made upon this planet is making it so that you can no longer afford to turn a blind eye to your awareness. While you certainly have the choice, we as spirit are making our choice to no longer pretend that there isn't any consequences, to take more than the higher point of view of saying, well, that didn't end well. They'll have another life. Oh, they'll try again. It doesn't matter. We are going to take the perspective from your level and say that it does. What about your journey? What about what you intended? What about what you planned for when you came in? Are these not important and should not be taken into account? Should we ignore these and turn a spiritual blind eye to keep the conversation polite so that it feels good to you, so that we can continue to get your attention? There are many from these meetings that will use the excuse of our tone and demeanor in the way that we express things in a general way about humanity that will be turned off because you're not telling me positive things about myself, so I don't want to listen. Then don't. We'll see you another life. We are here now to talk to those who would listen. And even if we can count them on one hand, the light that can be born from such situations of a true conversation would be more important to us than the world not listening, but pretending to. And so we have a very specific focus. And so with our tone and demeanor, we are going to talk in a very real way from this point forward about your planet, about your lives, and about what you're doing with it. And understand, it is not to judge you. We will always circle back around that to make it clear. You have a choice. There is no right or wrong. But for those that would listen, maybe they might want to understand why it is not a good idea to stick a fork in a light socket. And often we find ourselves as a being when we find avenues for coming in. Because understand, it's not just the body of this channel. We work with several others simultaneously on this planet and at different times, that you would call it, to come through and give information. So we have multiple doorways. We always do. But for those that would listen and those that would hear, we want to give the opportunity to understand. For understanding to clearly dawn by talking about it and discussing it in a real physical manner. We will give an example. Oftentimes, we pull information from the channel psyche. He picks up things. He connects dots. And often we find ourselves, when we talk with people, that all of this information is there before them, and we have to take the brightest color crayon in the box to connect the dots for them so they could see the picture within. We are going to attempt to do so in a real way. We were preparing the energy with the channel while he was out doing physical activities. And in that time frame of him being on the couch, getting things together, getting it ready, getting out the door, and coming back, he came across two pieces of important information that just presented themselves. And we say in this way that information comes to each of you not in a coincidental manner. They come as a way of a warning, as a way for you yourselves to grab that bright crayon and connect those dots to see the bigger picture. And for most of humanity, it refuses to do so. Or it claims to do so, but fails to actually bring it physically through in a very real way. The two pieces of information that came through was one on a news article explaining that there is currently a heat wave in both of your poles on your planet. Now this should be alarming. How do you have a heat wave in the coldest spots on your Earth? And you have a heat wave? Is that like beach weather? What does that mean? And how does that translate into fresh water melting, pouring into salt water, disrupting your streams of how the ocean flow works? And how does that affect your environment for weather, for sea life, for plankton, for the Earth's lungs? The second piece of information was a news report, a article of facts talking about electric vehicles. And this was information broken down in percentile of where America is at based on their opinion on the impulse to have an electric vehicle, a hybrid vehicle, or I choose not. And it came out for an electric vehicle to be only 21%. Hybrid vehicles, we believe, was around 35%. The rest was, we choose not. So, in translation, for the group mind of humanity, you are killing your planet. There is no other way to say this. You are killing your planet. Instead of taking responsibility as the beings that are here now to pass on a world to your children, and I'm talking in terms that is important to you, these are the things that make Hallmark cards sell. These are the things that gives your holidays glow. These are the things you say in societal terms to make you feel good about being a family. Are we wrong? They are not our terms, and they are certainly not what we value, but you say you do. And yet, you're killing your planet, ensuring that what your children will inherit is a planet that is unstable and does not work. That everything you know now and take for granted as given will now be topsy-turvy and in question. And this is the life that you choose to pass on to your children, for them to deal with. For them to deal with. Figure it out. And why? Here is the real kicker. Why? For the convenience to drive something you're comfortable with. Not in a sense of style, not in a sense of options, and certainly not in a sense of efficiency. Because when you look statistically, for most drivers, there is still a percentage of type of drivers that the electric option would not be a good match. Certainly. Your societies are not ready for a full change. But most categories that get into one of your vehicles to go someplace would certainly, easily, comfortably fit into one of those other two lower categories. So if it's not about style, if it's not about options that come with the car, and it's not about convenience, that does kind of leave us with this sense of normalcy. I just don't want to change. And if the planet gets destroyed in the process, okay. I got what I wanted. Forget how many future generations that still have to exist here. And forget that you're not really passing the problem on because you're going to have to be born back here. It will be your problem. And we speak to the portion that continue to choose a physical experience. It is your problem. It always was. And certainly, there is a part of the argument of the electric option that it just creates a new problem, because what do you do with the leftover batteries when the car is finished? But the point of them is that they give you a respite. They give you a moment to rebreathe, a moment to rethink, a moment to recalculate how to resolve the issue. Recently, the world went through a monumental period. It stopped for a period all at once. The pandemic that you deal with gave you the opportunity to just stop, just breathe. just be. And it is of no coincidence that when that occurred, depression rates skyrocketed. Suicides rose. Divorces occurred. Because in truth, what many avoid is that they do not like who they are, and that the distractions of constantly doing, that there's the point of avoiding yourself. But during that time period, what cannot be disputed was that the fogs, the smog, lifted off your major cities and the air turned clean. The rivers clarified and you could see the bottom. They stopped being the yucky brown and turned blue. Wildlife that had disappeared for how many years suddenly reappeared in those spaces. And understand the importance of that statement. The group mind of humanity, or the web of life, is more intricate than just the human part of it. It is all connected. It is meant to be one on top of the other, working seamlessly as a web, not as diverse of units where you go to a zoo to see that web. It is meant to be interconnected, one experience, one living with another. And so the web of life started to repair itself and reach back in. And then the pandemic was called off. Everyone got back in their cars. And in a very short amount of time, all of the healing that took place was reversed. Understand that your planet in certain areas are so many degrees from being able to sustain life, where deserts will be created because plants cannot survive. They will burn. The moisture will evaporate, and you will be left with sand. And you are watching it happen, and you do nothing. Because you don't want to change. You don't want something different. And if we would be so bold, to hell with the consequences. It's about my convenience. And then you create the justifications for it. And in this, there are too many to list. But you ignore the facts. Some of the heat gained by your planet is due to the tumultuous actions of its shaking. Your scientist has reported that it has tilted from the quakes, from the volcanic eruptions, so many degrees that it's not the same as it was 15 years ago. That's an important statement. One we would bring your attention to. Did it tilt towards the sun or away from the sun? Why is that an important question? Well, for anyone that has experience camping and toasting marshmallows to that perfection of heated but not burned, what difference does an inch or so towards the flame make in toasting that marshmallow? An inch can make it burn or toast beautifully. It makes a big difference. So some of this is natural change environment. Your planet is in the process of the poles switching, which is why they are traveling and why the quake's occurring. And yet humanity is doing everything it can to speed that process, to speed it up. And so we stop a moment to treat you like adults and talk about realistic consequences that's going to be generational, that cannot be reversed. When a change like this occurs on the earth, and again we say, you've destroyed this planet 7 times before. It takes a certain amount of time for life to come back. And it's never the same type of life. It always has to be rebuilt from the ground up. This takes time. It takes time. Are you truly willing to give up everything you have for the convenience of what you know now that you will not hold on to, because your consciousness will change and release that body? And whatever conditions that come afterwards, would you really want to come back in for a vehicle to experience that? Or might it be a better plan to stabilize and heal what you have now? We would point out the logic as adults. How many months within the pandemic before your environment started healing itself and you saw tangible results? You saw the temperature gauge of your planet globally notch back a few degrees. Notch back. But still, you push the pedal to the metal, and to hell with the consequences. We stop you a moment and say, are you aware of your consequences? Are you aware of the gift that you are setting into motion for the next phase for yourself and what that physically entails experiencing it? And now, we will get off the spiritual soapbox. Let us begin our conversation. What would you like to know today?
Thank you so much for coming and taking this time. That was, I think a lot of us have thought of that and have been aware. And this will tie in with the question, you read my mind in the beginning, the question I wanted to bring up. A lot of us have been aware, but a lot of us feel like we can't make the changes because those with the money and the power are making the decisions, and we feel forced in a corner to not be able to. And a lot of people have that thought in their mind, what can I do? It's the group mind seems hell-bent on not changing, whereas there are plenty of us that want it to change. But it's like trying to collect water from the ocean with a fork. And I'll tack this on because it's tying into what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is finding and working towards our true will, because we are so fixated on immediate happiness, satisfaction. A lot of people on the spiritual path want happiness. Very few say they want fulfillment. And I've been toying with the idea of fulfillment. And this is how it ties back to what you said. Finding one's direction, one's true will, one's purpose in this incarnation seems to have a solid anchor point, for example, me to work towards. I know this is a goal. I can align my life and thoughts and everything in my spiritual practices to go towards this point of my true will. A lot of us have always been told, do what you dream. If you can dream it, you can do it. Whatever you want. But there's no actual method being taught en masse of how to find one's true will and get to it. And why it ties in is, I think when we all have those anchors, we all have a more focused, more present mindset, as opposed to wanting to escape because we have no sense of anchor. And in that escapism, a lot of self-destructive behaviors to the self and to the environment emerge. Am I wrong on that?
No. But we want to bring back, you brought up, you said a mouthful.
I did. It's I because I see the tie between our planet's condition and our lack of knowing our true will.
And there are several points to touch on here. Each could take some time. But we want to start with, you said the expression was, if you can dream it, you can do it.
That's what we're told all our lives.
Correct us if we're wrong, but isn't the origin of that expression, if you can dream it, you can be it?
Ooh. Expand on that.
It's a matter of looking at your society of when things changed. In one statement, the original statement, if you can dream it, you can be it. I want to be a singer. You do not say, I want to do a singer. That implies something else and is not appropriate for this conversation. So when did your dream become involved so that it transformed instead of being the essence of what you dreamed? Because that is what a dream is. A dream is not a doing. A dream is a sense of being. When you dream in the bedroom, there is no doing. There are things that are happening, but the essence of dreams is what it is that you are experiencing in that moment from everything playing out in front of you. And it occurs very fluidly. This is a truer concept of your mind in a clearer state creating than what you would call your physical life. Your physical life is more of an illusion than your dream state. Your dream state is more real than what you call life, because it's closer to the fact of how you actually create. So in dreaming, you are not doing, you are being, which is the point of going after a goal. I want to be a doctor. But yet the focus now, according to you grouping in your other brothers and sisters, is that you are not being, you are doing. And that by doing, you'll eventually get to being. Does that seem logical?
That seems insane.
Hence your state of mind. There is a water tap right here, and you are thirsty. And instead, you spend your entire time using that water to clean the glasses, prepare the glasses, set the glasses up for the water. But what you never do is take the glass and put it under the water for a drink. Because you believe doing this will get that water. While that certainly has a small part in it, you grab a glass. You turn on the water and you experience drinking the water. And your body goes, ah. Because that's what it's actually craving, is the experience of the water going into the mouth, into the stomach, and dispersing from all the cells. What it is not looking for is all the mental machinations of making plans, cleaning the glasses, organizing the glasses, deciding that these are not appropriate because they're not showing worth, so you go out and buy a new set. And in the meantime, you're waiting for them to come in so you can get a glass of water.
I really like this analogy.
We try to keep it simple. You are here to be. You already are being. And the truth of the matter is, what you're being, you don't like. And you continue doing what you don't like, waiting for a sense of being. Hello? Are you listening? We keep knocking. Hello? Wake up. And this goes into the idea of happiness. We'll take that term out of the ether that you just shared and connect it. So we'll deal with happiness later. And we'll deal with happiness now. Everyone wants to be happy, but they don't choose to be happy. At what point in your life do you make that decision? Well, you would tell us it depends upon the qualifications. If finances are flowing good, if the job is going well, if the relationship has no issues, if the cars are running good, if we've got 3 vacations booked, already paid for throughout the year, then I have room to be happy. Oh. There was a bounce check. Cancel happiness. Let's focus on that. You can't wait for life to line up to choose to be happy. Happiness is a choice regardless of life. And especially regardless of the choice of those around you. Notice the little one has come for a visit again. She is tuning into our energy. So, but you do wait. Your world chooses to be in a constant state of waiting for the other shoe to drop, imagining what it looks like, and ignoring the beauty that's around you. What does happiness mean to you? We should have asked that question of you before we began our explanation.
Yeah. So
we will ask you, what does happiness mean to you?
So it's a really good question because language is no.
Don't think.
Okay. Being in a clear state of flow. When I'm happy, clear flow.
Thank you. You're about to give us a 30-minute dissertation on the physicalness of life.
Well,
we apologize to cut you short.
That's fine. Because it's going to be me going round and round justifying.
And us sitting here looking patient going...
Wait, you sleep?
Our point to you, clear flow, gross words of description, and they do not need to be clarified. They need to be experienced. That is the point. When you get into esoteric spiritual texts, the closer they get to the essence of an energy, isn't it strange the more they use one word and then say that it can't be described? Is that a coincidence?
It's experience. There's been plenty of things that were explained to me over and over, and the channel knows this. I bash my head against the wall. What the fuck are they saying? What the fuck are they saying? And it isn't until I experience it that it makes sense.
Correct. Because words don't convey an experience. It's why there's language gaps from one culture to another with certain words. I could say it, but I can't convey its meaning. How it works for us is the same way that it works for you, whether physical or not. It doesn't matter. You can't take the Almighty and put it into a book. It will not be contained.
Yet most of us are fooled into it.
And only the arrogant would ensure others that it is. It is a sound, it is an essence, it is an energy that gives vibrancy to the universe around you, that continues to create, continues to expand, continues to support, not just in the universe. In every moment you have a thought or an emotion, it is there. Absolutely. Of course. Create. It is your hands on the steering wheel. And that is the point of waking up. It's not to experience the energy that is within everything. You're already connected to it. The point of waking up is to understand it's your perceptions that is driving your vehicle of perceptions where it goes. It is not a GPS issue. It is not a past karma issue. It's not a future issue. And it's not those around you. And so we go to happiness and go back to the explanation that you gave and understand those who are listening, that will mean gobbledygook too. Not the point. The point is it means something to you. And that's all that matters. You've received your first symbol. An energy agreement to connect. One that you can use to free your mind. Happiness is flow. That's the mental. What's the experience? Tap into that. When were moments in your life that you felt that flow? Were you happy that things were flowing around you? Or were you truly happy because you were experiencing the flow? And the things flowing around you was a side effect. An important distinction.
Say that one more time, please.
Absolutely. Were you happy because you were experiencing the flow? Actually, we have that backwards. We first asked, Were you happy because things physically was flowing around you? Or were you happy because you were experiencing the flow and things flowed around you as the side effect of that experience?
The latter, because upon reflection, so almost all my life and most others, things have flowed. They just flow. But it's when I tap into that and I don't need words. I'm okay with it. I'm happy. For example,
We want to understand, because you made an important point, which contradicts a previous point.
I feel like a lot of things are shifting right now.
We are getting ready to rock your world.
Bring it.
So previously, we talked about you preparing notebooks, writing it down, organizing, finding it a fun way. We talked about your astrological aspects for the reason and logic behind it. But you never used the term happy. In fact, in essence, if we were to condense it, it would be tolerable, palatable, would be two words to use. But in this situation, you said flow equals happiness as an experience. But yet, the constructs logically are there to help create happiness, but yet they do not produce it.
Mm-hmm.
They do not produce the experience of it.
Mm-hmm.
So we come back here, the different perspective, and look at the happiness. And you just said, it's the flow, and everything aligns automatically when you're in it. We don't understand. It did not need to be planned and put in the book.
No.
It did not need to be organized and thought out with steps of achievement.
No.
Then how do you know it was real?
It was, you experience it. It was, this is stuff that happened and the future. But when you experience, none of that is there. I don't know how else to explain it.
So as you become involved in our teachings in the book, Finding the Inner Self, we use the expression often, which came first, the chicken or the egg? So we have the two examples. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? And which fed you as a being? And if it fed you, did it feed you because something spiritual came along and broke off some bread and threw it at your feet because you're worthy? You're worthy. You're not worthy. What caused that sense of connection, and what does that mean to you? What, as a spiritual scientist, as an occultist, does that mean? We are silent because that wasn't a rhetorical question.
I know. And it's so hard to put into words, but this...
And don't try to put it into words. Don't try to think about it in the right way. Freeform it to us.
Yeah.
Say anything.
So this is grounding for me. Just a sentence, 5 minutes at night, it feels nice. It's like a release. It's like my brain taking a shit. Excuse my French. It really is. And I find that I'm most present when I'm drawing boxes or outlining the week. It's the actual doing it, and then little doodles on the side, and I get lost is the best way to describe it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when it comes to migrating my tasks onto that, that's when I lose connection, and it becomes, okay, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this. But the actual writing and setting things up and planning the skeleton, I just get into it. It's when I start taking the have tos and putting it in that I click out of it, and then I start to resent myself.
Do you know the Old English way of writing? When you begin a paragraph, what does the first letter look like?
It's like a work of art.
Find writings of that style and doodle it. And pay attention to your feelings while you do. Because it will connect you from the experience. And we're not going to say past life because it's still happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
But it will connect you to that part of your mind that is doing that. There is a point of why that gives you great satisfaction of disappearing. Of having something that was just yours. Something that others would admire you for. A purpose, a reason. I would have room and board. But in a sense, it was your only joy. Because in that moment, the harshness of the world and the suffering and the unsurety is gone. All from the first letter of a paragraph. And while all of that is very important to a human life of understanding creativity and your experience within it, it is off subject from the point of flow equals happiness. We use the example of the planning not to make it bad,
Mm-hmm.
but to bring your attention to the point of something else, something important. And so we will go back and not make it easy on you to the original question.
Oh, the thing is, if you've noticed, you've already been pushing buttons, and I've already been catching myself reacting, and justifying. And
Really?
yes. And it was funny, before meeting, I thought about my relationship with all of y'all, in that I default to one being reprimanded and not good enough. And it hit me coming into this. It's like, no, I am not less than. There isn't that. This is an opportunity to communicate with a friend. And that's all this is. I'm having tea with a friend. And that part of my mind, the insecure part, is getting triggered like heck. I'm controlling my language. Like heck. And it's a combination of frustration, fear, and this just exhilaration.
Exactly. And all of that has nothing to do with us. It's your state of being, one that you choose. And only by pushing those buttons are you aware it's there. A life of comfort where nothing is challenged and nothing goes wrong leads to a very dull mind that learns not very little. It's one of the attractions of coming to a physical plane, is that based on free will, depending upon the degree of conflict of what is real and what is not, it pushes your buttons. And while all of you would state you hate this, if that is true, why do you keep coming? It's a tool to be used. But back to point. What we want to understand from you as our brother, from whatever level of understanding you have, your experience with connection to the universe, what does flow equals happiness mean from the standpoint and sense of what does that tell you about yourself as a being that sits before us? You understand that when you are in a flow, you have happiness, and life somehow seems to align, and we used the word synchronicity before, and things just line up. We've determined it's not them lining up that causes the happiness. It's the experience of the happiness that makes the other occur. So we seem to have an answer of which came first, the chicken or the egg.
And that's what you mean about you can't have all of this set up and nice, the conditions right, so that you can experience happiness. As you experience happiness, the conditions are the conditions.
Correct. And the conditions line up. The truth of your state of mind is that they often don't line up because you are often not connected to happiness. How can they? It is like taking the batteries out of a remote control car, holding them in your hand, and then saying, I wonder why it's not moving. Why is nothing happening? Because you remove the energy source that makes it go. And in this, we bring back to the question. We've outlined a preposition for you using your own words. And while we don't want to paint over a meaning with them that you did not intend, because if not, then you need to go back to the point of it to go over it again until you understand it clearly. But we think we got it accurate of an expression of your words. So now, as our brother sitting here existing before us, not Mansour, Dragon's Bane, Majir, not him. That's the fallacy. That's the illusion. That's the expression of what you think you are. We are talking to our brother that existed in that moment happy. And we challenge you to tell us that that happiness had anything to do with the illusionary body that is sitting before us. Did it accentuate it? Certainly. Did it make you appreciate it? Absolutely. But which came first, the chicken or the egg? Was it Mansour Dragonsbane Majir that caused that to happen? Or did that happen and it gave Mansour Dragonsbane Majir a cause, a sense of being, a sense of appreciation, a sense of experience from balls to bone? I'm alive. Which came first? Do you know?
To be honest, and I'm only honest with you, what I know is it relates to physical muscle tension relaxing.
Mm-hmm.
That's one balls to bone connection I make.
Mm-hmm.
And then everything past that is clouded with words and concepts and all this stuff. But what I experience in the moment with that happiness, with that flow, with that joy, is physical muscular relaxation.
So based on your answer, you are not yet at the place to give us an appropriate answer.
Because I don't know. I don't know.
Exactly. And there is no shame in that. In fact, that is a great truth. That is a foundation to set your life upon. What we are leading you to by backing you into that corner to answer your questions and getting you to that point to look in the mirror, a mirror you are not yet ready to consciously look at. The illusionary mirror of life, mirror of karma, the karmic mirror. And there is a face that sits before us. And it is assumed that if you are you and we are the mirror, that it is you that's looking at us. And while that certainly is true, and then you see a reflection back, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Are you looking at the mirror? Or does what exists in the mirror looking at you? And in that moment that you call happiness, that you said is flow, is an experience of being that has nothing to do with the conditions and the planning or any of that. It's not dependent on that. You didn't create it. You didn't plan it. And you're not directing it. It's an experience that is flowing through you. Through you. And the moment it does, you are happy. And the moment that you are happy, synchronicity in a life occurs, which contains your thoughts and emotions and perceptions of what you are. But what you're experiencing in that one moment is so powerful, it shatters your perceptions of who you are and your limitations. Every time you experience that, the dreams of what you are and what's capable expand exponentially. The Mansoor that woke up and thought of the possibilities of the day when his feet hit the floor is minuscule compared to the potential of who and what you are in that one moment when you connected and you're happy and you felt that flow. And you dream dreams within that one instant of what you're capable of, which you couldn't plan to happen if you tried your entire life. And it took just a moment. And so we will leave you with that nagging question and end this lesson and end this conversation and ask you again with no answer, no guidance, just you and yourself. What does it mean as our brother about your mind, its nature, the truth of you? When you look in the mirror and have that experience and you have that connection and everything you thought physically in an instant melts into nothingness. Everything that you think Mansoor, Dragon's Bane, Majir is, was, and will be has no effect or relation to that moment. But when that moment shines through to perceive that, you have appreciation from it that you didn't create, you didn't plan. And in that sense, from the physical Mansoor, Dragon's Bane, Majir, that's present, didn't come from him. what does that tell you about the true nature of your mind? And our peace to you.
Thank you.